So hello everyone. One of the things I have prepared for this Energy SIG meeting is some sort of knowledge sharing and experience sharing. And what I'm going to share now is an exercise. Is a presentation we make with energy companies typically. And the end result of this presentation is to create some awareness and get them to sign up for an immersive session, which is again something that we do for energy companies. Right. So this is an example of something that we have done before, and I'm going to sort of repeat not the entire presentation of the webinar, but parts of it. And it's called Connected at Scale and Secured by Design, Cyber Resilience for UK Utilities. So what does it mean? So we're going to run through why this sort of thing is required, what the digital transformation that happens in the energy sector, what risk does it introduce, the cyber risk it creates, the exercise that we are talking about. This is not the entire exercise. This is an introduction to the exercise because it is typically tailored to a particular company scenario, and what ready looks like, and then any questions and answers. So as we all know, in all industries and similarly in the energy industry, there's a digital transformation which is taking place. So there's decarbonization and modernization, there's asset performance and reliability, and operational efficiency. These three things drive a lot of digitalization. So decarbonization is all the renewable energy which is coming in, but they're all decentralized as well. Unlike the big power plants of yesterday, there are a lot of small solar and wind power plants, and they need to be connected, and that requires digital technology. The requirement today is also that with all these distributed generation coming in, reliability is a big concern. So we can't put the same sort of reliability on a 400 kilowatt or even a 1 megawatt power plant as we do on a large nuclear power plant. So with a lot of decentralized power coming in, reliability is a big concern. And all of this is driving a lot of digital technologies and digital transformation. And what happens is that on the right-hand side, you see all the physical assets. And all of these are now controlled by digital assets, which you see on the left-hand side. And what this does is introduce additional risk, additional cyber risk in particular. So what it does is increase the attack surface, and because there's more and more traditional infrastructure assets which are now connected to digital technologies, that increases the attack surface, that increases the blast radius as well. So that's something that a lot of people miss. The attack surface increasing is well known. What I mean by increasing the blast surface is that the attacker doesn't have to now necessarily enter your operational technology or IoT devices. They don't have to breach that. As long many of the recent incidents have been leakage from IT into OT. So they have breached IT, and that has brought down the shop floor operations, that's brought down energy production and so on. And basically the entire enterprise is wiped out in a few days. So, and we have seen examples of that recently. I'm not taking names, but energy, because it's critical national infrastructure, the events tend to be less well communicated, though more easily felt. But we have seen on the industrial scale, JLR and the likes, right, where production stopped. Now, one of the things that happened with JLR and many others is that after the breach, the IT bought up the systems and restored operations fairly quickly. But here's the catch. IT was back up and running, but the business wasn't. And that's where the question of readiness for incident response and so on comes in. Because the readiness needs to be holistic. It can't be just, I can restore my backups and bring my system up. Because as we'll see going forward, that you can have that, but still not have the business up and running. So when we are talking about readiness, what we understand and assume is that the attackers will get you at some point of time, which means that there'll be some breach which happens at some point of time. And when that happens, you've got to be prepared for how quickly you can recover and how you can limit the blast radius. And in preparing for this, in being prepared for such cyber incidents, we use the principle of which is often used in safety, which is about the safety bow tie model, which means that as you can see on the screen, there's an incident. In this case, it's a cyber incident. It could be a safety incident or any sort of incident. On the left-hand side, what you see here is all the threats, and what you're doing is all the preventative controls. Right? On the right-hand side are the actual post-incident controls that you have. So how do you respond to such an incident? So if we take a safety example, let's take a couple of safety examples. So for example, you could have a fire hazard because of a circuit overheating, and you put in some preventive controls. You put in a circuit breaker, you put in a fuse, so the circuit is disconnected when it overheats, rather than let the fire take place, right? Or other preventative controls could be that in your uh, you don't allow combustible materials to be stored in your warehouse. So that's a prevention sort of activity. Now, if you assume that you will still have some incidents, so you might still have a fire, these preventative measures may not work anymore. If you've got the fire, then the circuit breaker which tripped, uh, perhaps it still tripped, but you still got the fire. And what you need now is control activity. So these could be uh, ways to limit the fire. They could be, depending on the scenario, they could be special enclosures which limit the fire, right? So you're limiting the blast radius and limiting the impact of the incident. Or they could be, depending on the type of fire, they could be sprinklers which sort of put out the fire and get your operations back up. So a similar method needs to be applied to cyber incidents. And what we have seen is that a lot of enterprises are not geared up for this. So they don't treat cyber incidents with the same level of um, executive attention that they do with safety. And then some reasons are clear. If it's a safety incident, the board and the management could actually be liable for negligence. If it's a cyber incident, there could be a loss, and obviously nobody wants to lose money, but in most cases, they're not personally liable. So we see many people pointing to, when we ask the question, are you prepared? They point to their money they've spent, they point to the CISO they've appointed, they point to the number of recruitments they've done. But if we ask them, how long do you think it will take to recover if you are hit by a cyber incident? Many of them don't have the answers. The reality is that with energy companies, because it's critical national infrastructure and so on, a lot of it, they'll typically have to answer to the regulator, to the general public, and to the government, apart from the shareholders. So applying the same thing to cyber, to cyber context, we basically apply these 5 principles. One, business context is at heart. So every decision is informed by the business consequence. You have to prepare for the worst, because the minor incident isn't going to harm you a lot. It's the worst case, the really bad incident, that's going to expose you. So you assume the breach and plan for total loss. We need to detect early. So looking at the bow tie model, perhaps on the right hand side, you need to have smoke detectors, right, which you can detect early, because unless you detect early, you can't limit the blast radius. We spoke about limiting the blast radius, whatever we could do for that, and then how do we recover fast? So these are the 5 areas, 5 things you need to think about and be prepared with. So I'm skipping some of these things for this session, and I'll point to an immersive session that we could do for this group. and I'll talk about what it does later on. But we all know that humans are the in cyber terms, humans are the biggest weakness, probably much greater than any technology weakness that you have. And just a point that a lot of the energy industry is compliant by regulation. So there is a lot of regulation in there. There is, for example, Ofgem, which has specific requirements. There's NCSC, which has special requirements. And many of the companies point to their compliance and say we are prepared. But being compliant is not being prepared for an incident. Right? So reasons are many. One, many of the compliance activities are meant for compliance. That means people look at, can I check this and say I'm compliant, rather than look at how they can recover and so on. And, in most cases, I mean, this is from NCSC, compliance with common security standards can coexist. Not just coexist, they could mask weak security practices. And this is typically exposed when an incident hits. So don't assume that if you're compliant, you are ready. Now, we do have an immersive exercise. The reason we have the immersive exercise, and it's directed towards really the board and the top management, is that in a lot of cases, especially things like incident recovery and readiness, requires not just executive buy-in and sponsorship, but actual involvement. And these exercises are meant to create awareness that, look, your CISO can't decide on the ransom that you'll pay when an incident hits. The CISO is probably not even authorized to speak to the regulator, right? And, when you want to cut power to millions of people, then, it's probably the board which has to take the decision. So you are going to be involved. You are not just going to be involved, you're going to be actively participating in this. And if you're not prepared, you'll make the wrong calls. So this is an example of an exercise. This was something we made for an offshore transmission organization. So you've been hit by an incident, your energy management system is offline, your SCADA visibility across the converter station is gone, and the IT team reports they lost control of several servers. Now, you don't know how far it has spread. Now, there are 4 decisions that you have to take. There are many others, but I'm just highlighting 4. 1, do you isolate IT from OT now? If OT stays up, when does it come down and who decides? Do you notify the regulator? And do you call an external incident response? Bear in mind that there'll be probably 400 pounds an hour or something like that. So examples of some of the decisions. Do you isolate IT from OT now? What it means is that it means cutting the IT-OT boundary, but what crosses it is data. Now, how business critical it is depends upon the actual business that's experiencing this. But isolating it means that you can contain the attack, but then you could lose grid visibility and perhaps power. If you stay connected, you keep the visibility, but then you keep the path on for the attacker. And, in real time, because some of these decisions you'll probably not have a lot of time to take. Most incidents in critical infrastructure hit on a Friday night, and when no one is available, and that's when you'll be on the line to take these decisions, right? And if you don't know what's traversing IT/OT, you're not going to be able to take the right decision there. So that's one example, and that immersive session will sort of interactively guide you through this decision. Another one is if OT does stays up, when do you actually shut it down, and who has the authority, right? And 2 a.m. in the morning, and so on a Saturday morning. Another one is do you notify the regulator? Most CEOs don't want to notify the regulator unless they know what is happening. But the fact is that at this point of time, you're probably not going to have the full picture of what's happening. So the pros and cons for each one. I'm not going to say what's the right answer right now. And then do you call an external incident response, right? And bear in mind that they could be really, really expensive, right? And all this decision making, if you're prepared beforehand, you'll make far better decisions. And that's the thing that we try to emphasize in the immersive exercise. So uh, we say readiness is not a plan, it's a capability. And you should have readiness exercises which you can go through, which are real, which have a business context, not just IT context. And again, just recovering and business recovery needs to happen before technology recovery, right? So that's something we also guide businesses through. And just to uh, not run through everything, but we do a immersive cyber exercise that surfaces the readiness gaps. So it will tell you a few of your readiness gaps that you have, but it requires about 90 minutes, and it's meant to create awareness and initiate action. And then we have the whole incident readiness and response framework, which we help companies with, which is probably something that you do over several weeks. So that's the presentation now. What I'm going to offer to the group is that we could do this immersive exercise. It's a paid exercise we do with our clients, but we could do this 90-minute immersive exercise for the group as a knowledge sharing session as well. So that's the presentation for today.